Alright, so now we are working on the rear system, or the rear brakes. So we're going to go ahead and start with first the disassembly process. Just like we did in the front, you're going to remove pretty much the entire system, and then we're going to do a little conversion with our electronic parking brake to make these awesome rotors work. And we're going to show you the process of that. There's also an extreme thing that you may or may not want to do. I'm going to show you that. It does involve some cutting with a grinding wheel or cutoff wheel. We're going to go ahead and make this Polestar a fast one. Down camera. So again, you can go for removing this right away, but then you're going to deal with fluid everywhere. I'm going to do that towards the end when I'm ready to swap everything over. So I'm going to start with the electronic parking brake, and there is a sensor here that you have to unplug. It's right here. You're going to see this guy. There it is. Gosh. That was a pain. So next up, I'm going to go ahead and loosen this bolt up. It's still the T50. That holds the rotor on. Now you can see here, I'm spinning. That's because the other wheel is off the ground. Now with the wheel touching, the center diff is spinning. Okay, so I need some bolts. So this is what I meant by if you're by yourself. You may have to get creative. To just undo that. There we are. Put a couple threads back in. Those could come off. Alright, so we have to remove the caliper in order to remove the electric motor in the back. That is a 13 millimeter, and then I believe that is a 15. It's just a little snug. First one's always the rough one. And again, this rear caliper, as you can see, is a sliding piston single caliper. Obviously cast. These are very popular amongst base models. What you'll see in the front as well. So the slider part is actually what I'm undoing right now. These are the slider pins. And so we're going to be replacing this with a fixed 4-piston setup with a much larger caliper and rotor. From there, make sure your e-brake is off. Mine is off, clearly, because we were seeing it spin. I have wheel chocks on the other side. Sometimes this is easy to get off where you can just wiggle it. Sometimes you have to get a screwdriver or pry and actually pry this off. But again, you will not get this off if you have your e-brake on. And now we have good access to those two guys. You can see I loosened that one up already. Let's loosen this one up. So again, this is a T30. I'm using a 1/4-inch drive on a bit to get to it, because my larger T30 will not fit in here because the socket is so much bigger in diameter. There's two. Now this should come off nice and easy, and we can go put that on the workbench. Alright, caliper, I'm going to rest you over here on the sway bar. You're not going to go anywhere from there. Remove your pads. Whew, dusty. Now we're going to remove our larger brackets. If you want to go ahead and remove the shims that hold it in place, you can. This feels like it's a 15. Let me check. It is a 15. 15 millimeter to remove the backside bolts, which are sometimes extremely stubborn to come off. A breaker bar, or what I'll do is I'll tap a couple times with the hammer, or I should say mallet, and that'll loosen those guys right up for you. More rocks falling. Now, there's one. There's two. Bracket slides off. Remove your rotor screw. And you can already see the rotor was falling off for us. Just like that. What you're going to notice with this heat shield in the rear, there are no easy access bolts to remove it. If you were going to, you'd have to remove the whole hub in the rear, which would also mean removing your axle back here as well. So unless you truly want to go through that whole process, I, like many of you, are going to cut around to make space, because this lip that curves in is going to make contact with our new rotor because it's going to be significantly larger. We don't want contact. So I'm going to go get our cutting wheel and go do some fun cuts. So whenever using power tools, make sure you have all your protection. Eye goggles, gloves, earplugs, even a face mask if needed. So today we're gonna use a cutoff wheel grinder, and I'm gonna show you what we're gonna do. I've already marked the areas that we're cutting, and yeah, let's do this. We'll come back with a grinding wheel. And smooth all of the sharp edges off as well. That doesn't look as pretty as it could be. I need to do another cut here. I may have to replace this wheel pretty soon. Okay, so now I've got some markings back here. Probably gonna have to move that. I'm also gonna replace my cutting wheel, so we'll get back to that. All right, we've got a new cutoff wheel on. I've got to make another cut here, and then I'm actually be cutting part of the axle assembly, I suppose that's what that's called. So first, nice cut here. Alright, so now I'm gonna move this because that's where a ton of sparks are going. Move that to the other side. Move this up here. Now I'm gonna have at it in here. Whew, here we go. All right, so now we are ready for assembly of our rear brake motor, electronic brake motor, and how this is going to work. So essentially what's happening is the electric motor is going to work, which then compresses the fluid inside of here and transfers it over with the valve and everything to make our 4-piston work. So first thing you're going to want to do, unplug 1, unplug 2. They are marked left and right. If you notice, I just removed the left sticker. So these are going to be pointed forward, so that's going to go in there, that's going to go in like that. So again, we're just going to thread these on first by hand. There's one. I'm actually going to tighten that one first before I put on the next one. And it is an 11. Perfect. Then we get our next one up. Flip that over so they all face the same way. A little OCD on my part there with the logo. Oh, and then after you're all done grinding, of course, give it a shot of black paint, which is what I did. And that's going to allow, one, for there not to be any rust. Next up, I am looking at the instructions on this part. We're going to be putting on the provided O-rings on such like so. Needs to go over nice and tight. There we go. Now this next part I am going to put gloves on because the brake dust is on the electric motor, which I'm going to try and stay clean of. So now we have our electric motor. This is going to be facing on the opposite side. So the part that sticks down wants to be like so. You're going to push that in. After you line the holes up, boom, nice good click. Rotate it a little bit if needed. And you're going to put in the OEM bolts that it came with for that. The space that we were making as well is for this guy that you are looking at, to make clearance for it. So that's what all the cutting is for. If you like to have an e-brake, I do. Alright, so both sides are nice and tight. Next up, these are going to go through the bracket while it's mounted on the car. Like so, and mount it on like that. So we got to go mount the bracket next. Don't forget to add your Loctite as we mount up the bracket. Also, while you are cutting, make sure to check your clearances before you decide to put your Loctite and mount all this on. I did that all off of camera to make sure everything would fit properly. And then again, give everything a coat of some black paint back here so nothing rusts that you cut. These are 60 foot-pounds of torque. Oh. There's one. And for this one, I can't get my ratchet on very good. Right, next up, we are mounting our electric motor. I think I missed. And these are a nice gentle 14 foot-pounds of torque. Click. Click. Everything looks good. Everything looks polished in there. Now we can almost hook up that caliper, because that's going to be last. Let's hook up our new caliper and our rotor, and then we'll handle all of this stuff. All right, now let's see. Plenty of space. Oh. So good. So good.
They're like 20% bigger than my front Brumbos.
Alright, next up is attaching your brake line fitting. So remove the plug. Make sure you sandwich your coppers in. Also, the assembly of the brake pads is exactly the same as the front that I showed you earlier. You want to make sure too you're not kinking your brake line when you tighten this. There we go. Okay, now this isn't bolted in yet. We'll do that, and then we'll hook up our brake line. These are ridiculous. $11mm. All right, so here we go. Oh yeah, let's move this guy so that doesn't get in the way. There we go. All right, rear caliper's disconnected. Let me come over. Stick that through the hole. We're having issues. Let's get this around that. There we go. Get that in. Get the clip over. And now start tightening. Again, get your 17 here. Hold it on. Nice and tight, and then clean it off. And that's how you install these amazing Rotora brakes, front and rear. Yes, there's a little custom cutting you have to do in the rear, but it's just an absolute phenomenal fit and finish. The last thing you do, of course, is bleeding the brakes. There's many videos on how to do that. Essentially, you just want to pick one of these valves first, bleed it out, and then when you're at the very end, switch to the other valve to make sure there's no air at the top of both of them. Doing the same thing on the entire car. Put your wheels back on, drop it down, and next up is going to be, well, to see how it feels. So I will see you guys next time as I give you some real world impressions on braking distance from 55 miles an hour to 0, some track data, and then as well as just seeing how they feel overall. So stay tuned.